What was meant to be just another smooth night on set quickly spiraled into pure chaos. Witnesses say the tension backstage was so thick, you could feel it in the air. Whispers, side eyes, and heavy silence before the explosion. Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin, the couple everyone thought had finally found peace, were suddenly caught in a fiery confrontation that had the entire crew frozen in disbelief. According to insiders, it all started when one of Jim's closest team members said something off script, something that hit a nerve with Chrissy. She turned sharply, eyes blazing, and before anyone could calm her down, the argument escalated. Jim tried to defuse it, but emotions were already out of control. Cameras were rolling, crew members were backing away. And someone from their own circle kept pushing the tension even higher. By the time security stepped in, voices were echoing down the hallway. Chrissy was visibly furious. Jim's frustration was boiling over. And the production team didn't know whether to keep filming or shut everything down. People close to them claim it wasn't just about what was said, it was about betrayal, control, and loyalty being tested in real time. Fans are already asking what really happened backstage that night. And why does it seem like Jim and Chrissy are constantly battling not just outsiders, but their own crew? Because this time, the chaos wasn't scripted, it was real, raw, and dangerously personal. Backstage at the event, the mood was charged long before the cameras started rolling. The production team had been running on edge all day. Equipment delays, costume changes, and a schedule that kept slipping minute by minute. But even with all the usual pressure that came with filming Love and Hip Hop, something felt different this time. There was an uneasy tension between Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin. A quiet distance that didn't go unnoticed. Chrissy, usually calm and confident, seemed distracted. She paced the hallway, checking her phone, whispering to one of the stylists, her tone sharp and defensive. Jim, on the other hand, was sitting with his crew, nodding to the music, trying to appear unfazed, but his eyes told another story. There was frustration there, maybe exhaustion, maybe something deeper, according to sources who were present. Things began to unravel when a member of Jim's inner circle, someone he's known for years, made a comment that immediately changed the energy in the room. The words weren't loud, but they cut deep. Chrissy froze, her eyes narrowing, before turning toward Jim with disbelief. "You're really going to let him talk to me like that?" she said, her voice trembling between anger and hurt. Jim stood up, trying to keep his composure. "It's not that serious," he muttered, attempting to brush it off. But Chrissy wasn't having it. She stepped closer, the tension thick enough to make everyone around them hold their breath. The crew glanced at each other nervously. They'd seen arguments before, but this one felt different. This wasn't just a spat between lovers. This was about respect, loyalty, and power dynamics that had been simmering for months as the argument heated up. Production assistants tried to redirect the focus, hoping to get the scene back under control. But Jim and Chrissy were far from done. The words started flying, sharp, emotional, and impossible to ignore. "You always do this," Chrissy snapped. "You act like it's everyone else's fault when you don't want to face the truth." Jim clenched his fists, taking a step back but refusing to walk away. "You don't even know what's going on behind the scenes," he fired back. "You think it's about you, but half the time you don't even see what I'm dealing with." The crew's mics were still live, catching every word. You could hear the quiet gasp from someone off camera. The director signaled to cut, but no one dared step in. This was reality TV gold, the kind of moment that couldn't be scripted, the kind that would have fans glued to their screens for weeks. Suddenly, one of Jim's crew members, a longtime friend named Tone, tried to mediate. "Yo, y'all chill. Not here, not like this," he said, raising his hands. But Chrissy turned her anger toward him. "You don't get to speak for us," she said sharply. "You're part of the reason this keeps happening." That statement froze everyone. The air went cold. Tone looked stunned, his jaw tightening as he turned to Jim for backup. "She serious right now?" he muttered under his breath. Jim didn't respond, and that silence spoke louder than words. Moments later, Chrissy stormed off toward her dressing room, heels clicking furiously against the concrete floor. Jim followed after a few seconds, muttering something under his breath that no one caught. The cameras followed discreetly, capturing every second. Inside the dressing area, voices rose again. People close to production said it sounded like years of frustration finally spilling out. Chrissy accused Jim of letting his crew disrespect her, of putting loyalty to his friends above his loyalty to her. Jim defended himself, saying that she was overreacting, that she was reading too much into things. But the real issue wasn't the comment. It was the pattern. For years, fans have watched Jim and Chrissy navigate the messy intersection of love, fame, and business. They've seen the proposals, the fallouts, the reconciliations, but behind the cameras, their relationship has always been tested by loyalty. Jim's crew has been his family since before the fame. Then Chrissy has always felt like she's fighting for her place in that world. Backstage that night, it all collided. Every unresolved issue came roaring back to the surface. You think being loyal to people who don't respect your relationship makes you real? Chrissy shouted, "It just makes you blind." Jim's response was quiet but heavy. "And you think embarrassing me in front of everybody makes you right?" That line hung in the air like smoke. The silence afterward was deafening. Outside the door, a few crew members exchanged nervous looks. They knew this was bigger than an argument. It was a breaking point. When Chrissy finally walked out, her makeup was smudged, but her expression was steady. Jim stayed behind for a moment, sitting down heavily on a chair, running his hands over his face. Tone tried to speak again, but Jim waved him off. "Not now," he said. "Just leave it alone." By the time filming resumed later that evening, the tension was still there, thick, unspoken, and impossible to hide. Chrissy avoided eye contact, focusing on her lines. Jim played it cool, but his energy was cold, detached. The rest of the crew kept their distance. What the cameras didn't show was the aftermath, the quiet conversations, the calls, the damage control. Production reportedly had to cut several scenes from the final edit because the argument was too raw, too real. But those who were there said it was one of the most explosive moments they'd ever witnessed backstage. And while both Jim and Chrissy tried to move on professionally, everyone could feel it. Something between them had shifted for good. The spark that once made them one of reality TV's most iconic couples was flickering under the weight of too many secrets and too much pride. What happened that night wasn't just drama for television. It was a reminder that behind the glamour and fame, these stars are still human, fragile, emotional, and sometimes broken by the very people they trust most. By the next morning, word of the Backstage blow-up had spread like wildfire through the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set. Everyone had their own version of what went down. Some said Chrissy threw her mic. Others claimed Jim punched a wall. But no one could deny that the tension between them was real, raw, and impossible to ignore. Production tried to spin it as just another passionate disagreement between a strong couple. But insiders say this was different. Jim didn't show up for his first scheduled shoot of the day, which immediately raised eyebrows. Chrissy arrived 2 hours late, quiet and visibly drained. Her team tried to shield her from questions. But her face said it all. She was still hurt, still angry, and still replaying the chaos from the night before, behind the scenes. Producers scrambled to decide whether to address the fight on camera or keep it under wraps. But before they could even make a call, one of the crew members leaked a short, blurry clip to social media. In the video, you can hear Chrissy's voice trembling with emotion and Jim saying, "You think this is loyalty? You don't even know what that means." The clip was only 15 seconds long, but that was enough. Within hours, it was everywhere. Blogs, gossip pages, fan accounts. Jim and Chrissy's argument became the headline nobody saw coming. By midday, Jim's phone was buzzing nonstop. Old friends, business partners, even his mother. Everyone wanted to know what happened. "You good, nephew?" Mama Jones allegedly texted him. But Jim wasn't responding to anyone. He was furious that the situation had gone public, and even more furious that someone from his own team was responsible. Meanwhile, Chrissy was dealing with her own wave of backlash. Some fans sympathized with her, calling her brave for standing up for herself. Others accused her of overreacting, saying she should have handled things privately. But the one thing everyone agreed on: this wasn't just drama for TV. This was something much deeper. Later that evening, producers called both Jim and Chrissy in for a private meeting. Cameras were off, but the tension in the room was palpable. Jim sat back in his chair, arms crossed, jaw tight. Chrissy sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. Look, one of the producers started carefully. We can't control what's already out there. But if you both want to tell your side, we can do it on camera, respectfully. You know how this works. Chrissy looked at Jim, but he didn't look back. You mean you want us to turn our pain into a storyline? She said flatly. The producer hesitated, choosing his words. You don't have to. But if you stay silent, people will fill in the blanks for you. Jim finally spoke. Let them talk. They always do. His voice was calm, but it carried weight, the kind of exhaustion that comes from years of living under the spotlight. When the meeting ended, they left separately. Chrissy went straight to her hotel room. Jim went to meet with his crew. And that's when things took another turn. One of his longtime team members, Tone, the same guy who tried to step in during the argument, showed up late and nervous. Jim looked at him suspiciously. "You've got something to say?" he asked. Tone sighed. "Look, man, I don't know who leaked that clip, but I swear it wasn't me." Jim leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "You were the one holding your phone. Don't play with me, Tone." The room went silent. The rest of the crew shifted uncomfortably. Jim's temper had always been unpredictable, but this time it wasn't just anger, it was betrayal. He'd built his team like family. Now someone from that circle had sold them out. Tone swore again that he had nothing to do with it, but the damage was done. Jim ordered everyone to hand over their phones. "Until I find out who did it, we're done. All of us," he said, walking out. At the same time, Chrissy was confiding in one of her close friends, venting about the constant pressure of being in Jim's world. "He doesn't get it," she said. "He's surrounded by people who live off his name. They'll never tell him the truth because they're too busy keeping their place in his circle." Her friend nodded quietly. "You think he'll ever change?" Chrissy shook her head. "He doesn't see it as a problem. He thinks it's loyalty." By the next day, the leak had reached gossip outlets that rarely missed a beat. Headlines read, "Jim Jones and Chrissy's backstage meltdown caught on tape." Fans flooded the comments with theories. Some claimed it was a publicity stunt. Others insisted it was real. But what really fueled the chaos was the second leak, a full minute of behind the scenes footage that showed more than anyone expected. In the extended clip, you could clearly hear Chrissy say, "You always take their side over mine," before walking off. Jim responded, "Because they were with me before you were." That one line sparked a firestorm online. Viewers dissected every second, arguing over what it meant. Was Jim admitting that his crew would always come first? Or was it just a heated comment made in the moment? Either way, the fallout was brutal. Brands called, contracts were questioned, and production decided to halt filming for a few days to let things cool down. But for Jim and Chrissy, there was no cooling down. Trust had been shattered on multiple fronts between them, between Jim and his team, between them and the show itself. What used to be their comfort zone had turned into a minefield. When they finally crossed paths again, it wasn't during filming. It was late one night at the hotel bar. Chrissy sat alone, sipping her drink, scrolling through her phone when Jim walked in. Their eyes met briefly before he sat down beside her. "You talked to anyone?" he asked. "No," she replied. "I've said everything I needed to say," sighed, looking straight ahead. "You think I wanted any of this? You think I asked for people to see us like that?" Chrissy didn't answer right away. "You didn't have to ask. It's what happens when you don't protect what's yours." For a moment, there was silence between them, the kind that feels heavier than words. They both knew they were standing at a crossroads. Either they'd finally learned to move past the chaos, or this was the moment their relationship would never fully recover. And somewhere, In the background of it all, someone still had the original footage uncut, unedited, and far worse than what the world had seen. A ticking time bomb that could destroy everything if it ever came out. The third day after the incident, the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set was under strict lockdown. Security was doubled, phones were banned from Backstage, and every member of the crew was warned. No more leaks, no more whispers. But that kind of silence only made the tension worse. Everyone knew something was brewing between Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin. Something that couldn't be contained by production rules or PR spin. Jim showed up that afternoon wearing dark shades. Hood up, walking straight past the cameras. He wasn't in the mood for small talk. His crew trailed behind him, quieter than usual. Tone was there too, his expression tight. No one dared bring up the leaked footage again, but you could feel the distrust in every interaction. It was like the bond between them had been replaced with suspicion. Chrissy arrived shortly after, stunning as always, but visibly detached. She didn't greet anyone, didn't look in Jim's direction. The crew noticed. They always noticed. And producers, desperate to salvage what they could, planned a private sit-down between the two. Not for drama this time, but to see if there was any chance of moving forward. When the cameras rolled, it started quietly. Jim leaned back, arms crossed, his voice low. "You got something you want to say to me?" Chrissy hesitated. "You already know what I want to say," she replied, "but I don't think you're ready to hear it." Jim smirked, not out of arrogance but pain. "Try me." She took a deep breath. "I've been by your side for years. Through everything, the music, the tours, your family, the ups and downs. But every time I think we're building something real, something solid, it's like your people get in the middle of it. You let them disrespect me, and then you expect me to pretend it's loyalty." Jim didn't respond right away. He looked down at his hands, then up at her. "You think it's that simple? You think I don't see what's happening? I got people around me who've been there since day one. They held me down when nobody knew my name. I can't just cut them off because you don't like how they move." Chrissy's voice cracked slightly. "It's not about cutting them off, Jim. It's about you standing up for me when they cross the line. I'm not your enemy. I'm not the one trying to break you down. But when I feel like you choose them over me, it's like I don't even belong in your world." For a moment, the room was still. Even the producers watching from behind the monitor didn't breathe. Then Jim finally said it. "You're right. I ain't been fair. I've been trying to keep the peace, but I ended up making you feel alone. That's on me." It was the first real acknowledgement of guilt from him, and it hit Chrissy harder than she expected. For years, she'd wanted him to see it, to say it out loud. But now that he had, the wound still stung. "You can't just fix this with words, Jim," she said softly. "You gotta mean it when the cameras ain't around." Jim nodded, looking away. "Yeah, I know." Just when it seemed like things were finally cooling down, the door opened and Tone walked in. Everyone froze. He wasn't supposed to be there. The producers exchanged panicked glances. But before they could stop him, Tone spoke up. "Yo, I gotta say something," he said, stepping closer. "This whole thing got out of hand, and I'm not gonna let people think I'm the one who leaked that video. I didn't do it, but I know who did." Jim's head snapped up. "What?" Tone nodded, his voice steady. "It was Darnell. He's the one who sold it. Said he needed the money and thought it wouldn't get traced back." The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Darnell, another longtime crew member, had been with Jim for nearly a decade. Someone who'd shared hotel rooms, late-night studio sessions, family cookouts. To hear his name in this context felt like another betrayal on top of everything else. Jim stood up, his anger barely contained. "You serious?" Tone nodded again. "Yeah, I got the messages." He was bragging about it. The room erupted. Jim stormed out, demanding to see the evidence. Production followed, trying to keep the cameras steady, but it was pure chaos. Outside, in the hallway, Jim confronted Darnell directly. The two argued in front of the crew, voices echoing off the walls. "You sold out your own people for a few clicks?" Jim shouted. Darnell tried to defend himself, but Jim wasn't listening. "You're done. You're out." Don't ever come near me again." Security quickly stepped in, separating them before it got physical. Darnell was escorted off the set. When Jim returned to the dressing room, his whole demeanor had changed. He looked broken, not angry anymore, just drained. Chrissy watched him quietly, her expression softening. "I told you," she said gently. "It's always the people closest to you." Jim didn't argue. He just nodded, his voice low. "Yeah, you were right." For the first time in a long while, there was no yelling, no defensiveness, just mutual exhaustion. They both knew this experience had changed something between them. The fight, the betrayal, the leaks. It all forced them to face the truth about their world and the cost of keeping it together. Later that night, when the cameras were finally off and the set was quiet, Jim and Chrissy sat outside by the trailers away from everyone else. No glam, no lights, just two people trying to make sense of what was left. Chrissy broke the silence. "You think we can ever get back to how it used to be?" Jim looked at her for a long moment before answering. "I don't think we can go back," he said slowly. "But maybe we can start over." That small spark, that hint of hope, was enough to soften the edge between them. For all their chaos, all their public drama, Jim and Chrissy had one thing that couldn't be faked: history. And no matter how many betrayals surrounded them, they always found their way back to each other, even if it wasn't perfect. But as they walked back inside, one of the producers whispered to another, "The footage is still out there." Because while Jim had handled the betrayal within his crew, there was still one copy of the uncut video that hadn't been accounted for, and if it ever surfaced, the chaos backstage would look like nothing. Compared to the storm waiting to hit next, if you thought the drama stopped there, think again, because what just happened backstage is only the beginning of something way bigger. Jim and Chrissy's world is spinning out of control, and the cracks in their relationship are starting to show for the whole world to see. Was this just a misunderstanding, or the start of a total meltdown for hip-hop's once favorite couple? Stay tuned, because I've got the exclusive details on what went down right after that explosive moment. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Subscribe now and turn on those notifications, because the next episode is going to blow your mind. This is a puzzle swipe where the truth hits harder than the rumors. And what happened the next night changed everything.